Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It is me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and this week we're here to talk about more death and carnage that Larry Hama wrought on our fragile childhood minds. This war, the never-ending war in Benzheen, continues. We're talking about GIJOE 113. For new listeners, this is the Joe and Joe podcast, where I go over every issue of GIJOE Real American Hero in sequential order, page by page, panel by panel. We've also done every episode of the Sunbow stuff and the DIC stuff, cartoon I'm talking about. And we did, of course, Extreme! We're going to be getting back to some animated stuff soon. I feel like I've teased that for months now, but we're getting there. You know, part of it, frankly, is COVID related. I like to do those interviews in person, but we certainly can be doing them remotely like every other podcast in the world. So we're going to get to it. Speaking of other podcasts, of course, first and foremost, I want all of you guys to give a listen to our friends, the Movies in a Meal podcast.
Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts. And you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie? It's about not two movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben. And each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show.
They have been a fantastic sponsor, and they really have a great stuff, especially if you like movies. And I don't know who doesn't love a good movie. There's a lot of good stuff that's starting to come out now, of course. Everyone saw Spider-Man. It was amazing. I saw the Tick, Tick, Boom recently. I thought that was pretty good. Last week we went and we saw Scream. I thought they did a wonderful job with Scream. There's good stuff coming. And Uncharted looks great. I like Tom Holland. Not a huge Mark Wahlberg fan, but Uncharted looks like a lot of, like it could be a lot of fun. Could also be one of those, it could go one way or the other. I don't think it's going to be mediocre. I think it's going to be a whole lot of fun, or it's going to be ugh. So let's hope that it does. Let's hope that it does well. But I was going to say, speaking of podcasts, I just want to shout out to a friend of ours, friend of the show, John Carl. He's got himself a new X-Men podcast, and we've been talking every week. I want to try to get on there as a guest, so I need to do my homework and get him what episode I want to do. But he's got a great new X-Men podcast. If I know there's crossover here, if you guys are fans of the X-Men animated series. It's called Cyclops is Waiting for Me. So give those guys a listen. Look them up on Apple and iTunes. They're brand new. They just started episode 2 drop. They're doing kind of, I don't mean it doing what I do, what we did, with this, because it's different, but they're going episode by episode. So they're going to cover all the old school X-Men animated stuff as we lead into that new X-Men. I think it's X-Men 97 that they're doing. They're doing a sequel to it over on Disney Plus. And it's good. It's a good, fun listen to. So if you like X-Men, give that a shout. Give my friend, tell John Carl the Joe and Joe pod sent you, and hopefully we'll do a crossover. And we'll, speaking of crossovers, man, do I have a fun idea this week. That's all I'm going to say. Tease that one out for the long run. Eventually one day you're going to be like, oh, that's what he was talking about. So I am talking about GIJOE though. And I'll tell you what arrived this week, which was great. Actually, let me grab it real quick. I got my, I think a lot of us did. I saw on Twitter, a lot of us did. My 3 3/4 O-ring Snake Eye Storm Shadow kit arrived, and all it makes me want to do is buy another one because it's a good looking box, and now I don't want to open it, and it's totally sealed with tape and everything. And I'm like, oh, I saw pictures of what they look like online. Obviously, it's the old school O-ring cards. I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for that stuff, guys. I am an absolute sucker for 3 3/4 O-rings, and I know all of you listeners are too, so you know what I'm talking about. But my Snake Eyes Storm Shadow 2-pack arrived this week. So if you ordered that from Hasbro and you haven't gotten it yet, be on the lookout. Check your emails because they are arriving in stores now. I guess also the Super 7, I think it's a second wave of the Super 7 stuff, is showing up in Target a lot. I'm seeing a lot of people saying that they're seeing the Super 7 toys, so that's really cool too. Also really cool, well, it's actually not cool, is the number of people that Larry keeps killing in these comic books. It's really been, what is this, 90, so 10, yeah, it's 30 years. It's really been 30 years since I've read these books, and I completely forgot how many people he murdered. Today's issue 113, and it's no different. So before we dig into that stuff,
You were saying?
let's do our segment where we talk about comic books that were on the shelf the same month as GIJOE 113. And this is cover dated June of 91. So the real-time date is February of 91. So in June of 91, we've got some good books here. Let's see. Oh, we talked a lot about Armageddon 2001 last time. I think that's a John Fleet cover on Batman. Let me expand this to make sure I get my data correctly, because that's a gorgeous cover. It's Batman in chains. I'm sorry, Scott Hampton. I was totally wrong. Scott Hampton did a painted cover of like Batman in handcuffs on the cover of Armageddon 2001 annual. It's an annual number 15. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous cover. I really like it. Flash volume 251. If memory serves, this was like a Russian speedster team that he was aligned with. There's an American flag in the background. I think that's what it was. Russia was like starting up their brand of speedsters, and there was all like chemically enhanced stuff. I think that's what was the storyline. It's been a long time since I read this stuff. This is it's really good though. It's Wally West, the Wally West era of Flash. If you've never read it, you should. It's great. He's back in the comics. The Flash comic has been really good for a couple of years, even before they brought Wally back. But Wally's back now. It's enjoyable. I'm not a massive fan of the kids stuff, but they're not. I think the last time we saw the kids handled was, I think Mark Waid wrote them, and I didn't love the way he handled them. No shade, just didn't love it. I like it this time. It's a little less cutesy and more like real talk with them. So that's good. So if you're a Flash fan, now if you're an old school Flash fan, now might be a good time to go back and check it out now, because Wally's back and he's the star of the book again, which they kind of don't advertise as much. They just move on, and there's Wally. Dr. Psycho rather, on Wonder Woman, it's a great cover. It's like this concentric circle effect with Dr. Psycho's eyeballs and Wonder Woman's body being ripped apart, and Dr. Psycho in the middle of it. And it's cool. It's a fun cover. That's kind of... Twilight is a book that's out there now. This is a book that I thought I would like more than I did. Twilight, they did a trade of this a couple of years back, and that's when it kind of came on my radar, and I ended up actually having the issues, or it came across the actual issues, so I read them. It's Howard Chaykin wrote it, and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez drew it, so right away you're talking quality, and it is well done. But it actually stars like all these old, unknown / sea-level space dudes that DC had, like Manhunter 2070, Star Hawkins, Tommy Tomorrow, guys that would show up and showcase a lot back in the day, and kind of updated. It's similar to what Abnett and Lanning did at Marvel 10 years after this with the Annihilation story, and which then led to the modern version of the Guardians of the Galaxy, which led to Marvel making $1 billion. So this is not a terrible idea that they did, but it's taking these characters that really no one cares about and kind of telling a more modern story, in this case modern 1991 modern, and And it just didn't hit for me. And I don't remember exactly why, but I remember being very excited to read this because I love stuff like that, pulling minutia and making modern stories with it. It just didn't hit, didn't land as much as I don't know if you guys have ever read Twilight or not, but they did do a trade of it a couple years ago, so it would have been in your purview. But yeah, but check it out though. If you do like old school DC, don't sleep on Twilight because it's got so many great creators on it that there's and fun ideas that there's probably something that might resonate with you.
You were saying?
Now we're looking over at Marvel Comics. We're going to see what's happening over at Marvel Comics. Avengers West Coast is doing an homage to, was it X-Men 101, where Phoenix came out of the Jamaica Bay water? And in this case, it's, is that, what's her name? No, I thought that was, I don't know who that is. Oh, it's Pele, Goddess of Fire. It says that in the cover. Pele, Goddess of Fire. But she's emerging from the water, and it's totally an homage to X-Men 101, which is really great. Like, I think it's an awesome cover. But I was thinking it was, Firebird. That's who I was thinking of, who ran around with the West Coast Avengers. But it's not. It's whoever this Pele, Goddess of Fire is. Most importantly, Barbie fashion number 6 and Barbie number 6, guys, is on the shelves. Here's the shocker that you may not know about Barbie comic books. They're expensive. Actual guide-wise, they're actually hard to find. I think because Barbie collectors are numerous and they like their stuff mint. So if you get yourself, if you're in a, you're at a thrift store or comic shop or something, and you run across cheap Barbie comics, pick them up. Like I'm talking like, dollar books or something like that. Grab them because we sell them when we sell them in the store. When I get them in, I regularly price them between $10 and $20, depending on quality. And they may sit there for a little while, but they eventually sell. So if you get your hands on some cheap Barbie books, the Barbie from Marvel, don't miss on them because I don't know that Barbie had a comic book before this. And I feel like that little bit of trivia is what drives this because I don't think Barbie had I don't think she had a comic book before these Marvel ones. Over in Captain America 386, the U.S. Agent shows up. I'm an old school fan. I love U.S. Agent. I love that black and red costume they give him. I think that's a great look. It says everything you need to know about the character, still keeping him in the patriotic realm, but just saying it's the darker shade of, American patriotism. This is interesting. Car Warriors number 1. What the heck is Car Warriors? I have no idea what this book is. It's written by Chuck Dixon, drawn by Steve Dillon. I'm in on the Steve Dillon stuff. Rest in peace. Phil Winslade inked it, which I'm also in. That's great. And Chuck Dixon, I like his writing. And this is, it's about a bunch of car. The main character is a dude his name is Chevy Vasquez, and his nickname is Mad Mex. So it sounds like it's a Mad Max kind of story. I have no experience with Car Warriors. Speaking of this, I can't remember if I talked about it, but I did finally read that Hollywood Superstars comic book. It was great. It was absolutely great. And it was about like a bounty hunter stuntman. And it was a lot of fun. And it was based on real world stories that what's his name, who was assistant to Kirby, real world stories that Mark Evanier, he was the writer on it, that he had known about during his time. And the crazy part is the first story arc is just straight up about the John Landis helicopter incident with the Twilight Zone movie. Apologize if I didn't get back to you guys on that. Or if I did and I can't remember talking about it. But it was a well done comic book and with engaging characters and and all that stuff. But like the first story arc is just straight up the John Landis helicopter story, and I was like, wow, that's wild. It was great. Fantastic Four 353, wonderful Walter Simonson Human Torch on the cover. That looks really hot, like pun intended. Really great, really great. What else? Oh, the Wolverines Origin continues in Weapon X 78 and 79. Got a lot of Barry Windsor Smith studies of Wolverine's upper torso and a lot of blood and sinew and everything going in, and a lot of hair. He gave Wolverine just such a great, giant, big head of hair. Just absolutely fabulous. Marvel Universe Handbook Edition is up to issue number 7. Let's see. I think this is the X-Men have Wolverine, and this is the era in X-Men. So it's X-Men 277, and this is the era when they were putting everyone in the blue and yellow outfits. Even Gambit had to wear his trench coat over a blue and yellow outfit, and that's what this cover is. It's funny to see Wolverine in a blue and yellow, not his traditional yellow and blue, but the X-Men blue and yellow outfit. I think that's really funny. And it's kind of a precursor to putting him back in the blue and yellow. And and that's it. Oh, and speaking of Larry Hama, of course, we're always speaking of Larry Hama here. He's writing on Wolverine, the series, and he ends up writing on Wolverine, I think, like 40 issues or so, or 50 for a while. And this is his Silvestri run. I can't remember. Did it start here, or did he start? No, I think he's been on it for a little while, and it's great. If you've never read Larry's Wolverine stuff, you're missing out. It's really, really good. LCD and the robot Wolverine, I forget what his name was, Albert. That's right. Yeah, it's really solid stuff.
You were saying?
I was saying, Stalker. I was saying, in the movie theater in February of 1991. Let's see what we had here. We've got Patrick Dempsey in the movie Run. I feel like I saw that movie. Like he's literally on the run. He's a law student. And while he waits for the car to be repaired, he gets mistaken, taken to an undercover casino, and he learns that he beats someone in poker, and so he has a bunch of mobsters after him. I think this was a pretty good flick. Run. With Patrick Dempsey and Kelly Preston. I think I enjoyed that movie. There's a movie called Popcorn. It's an American slasher movie. I have never heard of this movie, but it's got Dee Wallace in it. I'll watch it. I'll watch a horror movie with Dee Wallace in it. February 8th, the great movie LA Story with Steve Martin. Underappreciated. I think over time people have come to realize how really good it is, but it's awesome. The billboards keep talking to him. We also have the Neverending Story 2 on the 8th, which not as good as the first Neverending Story. Also we have Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, which is Gary Oldman, Tim Roth, Richard Dreyfuss. It's a really great play. And I know I've talked about this before. If you're a fan of this, if you're a fan of Rosencrantz, Guildenstern Are Dead, which is, about characters in Hamlet who are, this is the story of like what they do behind the scenes kind of a thing. Like they move through the story and it follows them, the secondary characters. It's a great Star Wars book called Tag and Bink Are Dead, which does the same thing. And it moves Tag and Bink, these two rando stormtroopers, throughout the entire trilogy, and how they were there for all of the major moments that we saw, and we just never realized it. It's wonderful. Sleeping with the Enemy was a huge movie. That's a huge movie with Julia Roberts. Long time since I've seen this movie, but this was a massive, massive hit. And of course, February 14th, Silence of the Lambs. And it's funny that has its own day. Like it's. So, well, let's see here. The 15th, so same weekend, they hid King Ralph, which John Goodman, about a bowler who realizes that he's an heir to a throne. I do remember that movie. That has been a long time since I've watched that. I cannot vouch for it. But also Nothing But Trouble, which is also supposed to be a comedy, and hard to watch. It's a hard to watch comedy. It is. There are moments of brilliance in it, and there are moments of like, what do you think is funny? Dan Aykroyd. He directed that movie. Let's see. Oh, Bride of the Reanimator. I love the Reanimator movies. They're always great. Jeffrey Combs is fabulous. And he said, she said, Kevin Bacon, Elizabeth Perkins. That was a big hit. And then, so that's kind of it. Yeah, so it's a decent. I mean, I think between Silence of the Lambs, Sleeping with the Enemy, you've got a big month for, that thriller murder stuff. But Silence of the Lambs is great. I remember seeing Silence of the Lambs. We went to a $1 screening of it back in the day because we had heard it was good. And I absolutely recall there were parents with children, young children in the screening of that movie. And even us as, what would we have been, 16-year-old teens? Yeah, 16-year-olds, we were like, that is unacceptable. Why did you bring children to a screening of Silence of the Lambs? So here we are 30 years later. I'm throwing shade to random people for doing that.
You were saying?
And that's it.
Now, mass is ready.
That's right. It is ready, Destro. We're talking G.I. Joe 113. A great cover by Andy Kubert. It does suffer. Anything he's drawn is 10 times better than anything I've ever drawn. But it does absolutely, I think it suffers from that Image era style of we don't need to draw the full body. We just draw lines and pretend that there's a lot of smoke covering people. I don't think it's because they couldn't draw feet, legs, etc. It was just a style, and it does evoke depth. It does add depth and layer to the image. So I get that. I think you accomplish it a little bit with Photoshop these days, a little more than you would have back then. Computer coloring not being the de rigueur yet. So it does accomplish those two things, but it's funny. You get the lower half of this for the Joe's part of it is covered by that smoke, but it also gives distance, and so that's good because you notice that smoke's not covering the alley vipers up front. Coloring. Speaking of coloring, I do think whoever colored this cover, and I don't know who colored the cover, but I mean, if it was the same coloring as Bob Sharon, who always does a great job, I think they made a mistake not choose to me. I think it was a tactical error. There's a broken like storm pipe on this cover, and it is the same color as these alley vipers. This alley viper orange that they're using for them, and so it looks like an extension of the alley viper is somehow broken and in the middle. I wish that pipe was just a different color, just something different, because between the blue straps on it, which are also the blue straps on the alley viper, I don't know, it doesn't work for me. I wish it was something else. But if you look at it chromatically as a whole piece, Joe's are in the background with the green. They got the green, this color scale of green happening, and the foreground you have this color scale of orange happening. So that works for me, except we're not doing representational colors. We actually are doing things colored the way they are. Roblox got a different green than Tunnel Rat, and he's got the red in the middle of his. You know what I mean? Like it's not a monochromatic style cover. So I wish that would have been a different coloring. Anyway, just a little nitpick, but otherwise it's an awesome cover. Don't get me wrong.
Yo, Joe!
All right. Previous agreement. Script by Larry Hama, John Statma pencils, Randy Umberland inks, Rick Parker lettering, Bob Sharon doing the coloring, Bobby Chase editor, Tom DeFalco editor in chief. So I thought this was an interesting way to get into it, and I'm not surprised because this is how Larry tells stories. He just gets into it. But if you remember, we left last episode. Character sensation of 1991, Cool Breeze, was dead, and they had brought him back, and so he was part of the memorial for the dead fallen Joes, because we were, was it 7 or 8 that we had already from the Saw Vipers' Reign of Terror, and then Cool Breeze got shot by that Faoud guy. So we left with the forward observation team bringing back a dead Cool Breeze. Well, this picks up with that same forward observation team back in the field. And now we're actually in the city of Benzheen. So it's good storytelling. It takes place right in the middle of the action in medias res. So it makes a lot of sense. So I like it. I like that the war continues. And again, this is their kind of parallel to what was going on in Afghanistan or Kuwait back in 91. So this is, parallels to that. So it's going to be a protracted war here. And that's what we're in the middle of since issue, 107, 108. So this, side note to that, it got me thinking, I don't know why G.I. Joe Marvel, well, when Marvel lost the license, they weren't really doing trades. But in the time since then, between Devil's Due and IDW, and I know IDW just lost the license. Hopefully we'll hear who picks it up soon. They say rumblings that it might be Kirkman's Skybound. But I'm flabbergasted why no one has collected these, whatever the number ends up being, 7 or 8 issues of this war in Benzheen. Why has that never been collected into a trade? This would this would sell really well. And if it has, I've never seen it. But this should be a perennial seller. Very much like Legion. And I thought I was going to go a week without talking Legion of Supers. The Great Darkness Saga, where it comes kind of in the middle of the books. You know, it's not necessarily around an anniversary or a big deal or even, announced on the covers. It's just this story that starts and happens. In Phoenix Saga as well, where it's in the middle of the X-Men series, and it's just a really good story. Same thing here, where you could just pick up, was it 107 or 108? Just pick up those issues, run through the next eight or nine issues, and you've got a really compelling story about a lot of loss, a lot of, action, especially, centered around a war in the Middle East. I feel like that, when however the trade situation gets settled, that should be a day one style trade. Certainly I'm all for doing the collections and the omnibuy and, comprehensive collections and stuff. But if you're looking at ways to make ancillary collection revenue, where someone's like, I need a good G.I. Joe story. This Warren Benzheen is a no-brainer. And you call it the Warren Benzheen or the Benzheen, or Casualties of War, whatever you want to call it. Like it screams to be collected. Anyway, back to the action. That forward team, Stalker, Sneak Peek, Dusty, when Ambush is involved, they're back into it. And I love this setup that he gives us. They're actually, according to Stalker, they are pinned down behind the Porsche dealership at Abu Talib Square. So they need relief. So they're asking, basically, they're pinned down. They need some help to come in. What I love about this setting is, it couldn't be a more, especially at the time, couldn't be a more decadent car dealership that they're pinned down at. It's not just at a car dealership where there's used cars and beaters and, bugs and Volks. No, it's a Porsche dealership. So all this oil money, there's contrasted with, these poor people who don't have anything and, who are getting the average citizen is getting run out of town. And yet they have this deluxe Porsche dealership right in the middle of town. What a great, great concept for Larry to set this story in, for real.
Yo, Joe!
And from whatever building the Cobras are, we've got a bunch of Alley Vipers and Frag Vipers. They're pinning them down. So there's all throughout this issue, there's a lot of crossfire happening. And I, to be honest, I don't exactly, I don't think it's necessary. They don't really do a great job of, battlefield logistics, like of us keeping track of the battle. Sometimes we talk about that where, if like there's a tank fight, like they'll usually this book does a great job with saying there's tanks here and that tank's there. We don't get that a lot in this, and I don't blame anyone for that. I think it's not necessary. Just, that they're in a building across the way and they're pinning the Joes down. That's kind of all you need for this, and I think that's another smart choice. You don't need to go point by point on a battle like this. It's just that they're in trouble and they need help. But we did some nice renderings by Statement of the Alley Vipers, who are, and I know a lot of you people love Alley Vipers. I appreciate them now as an adult. I did not like them as a child. I had gotten out of collecting the toys, and I remember seeing them going, boy, am I glad. Their costume is just an elaborate series of bad angles. And I think he does as good a job as any in portraying them accurately in this comic, because with all that weird, the kind of urban camo they have, they could be a chore to draw. And I think he does a pretty good job of rendering them. So Stalker and those guys just keep getting told that there's no support on their way.
Yo, Joe!
And now we get to a great page. And it's funny, it's a page that tipped me off. And I went, they normally do stuff like this when someone's about to eat it. And I forgot. That's because the cover, I did forget to say this, the cover says Inside the War Continues, and it teases the death of BattleForce 2000 ? Which I was like, that seems unnecessary on the cover. But I totally forgot about our pal Sneak Peek. So it's Sneak Peek and Dusty, and they're on the other side of a Porsche that's getting shot up, and they're chilling, and they're eating sea rats. Now, I feel like a car is not good enough cover for me to relax and eat some rations. But like they were behind some kind of like steel industrial door, that they knew they were safe behind. I feel like a car could get shot up pretty quick, but I love the sentiment that Larry's putting here, which is even in battle, troops got to eat, and these guys are so cool and chill and used to this stuff that, you know, they're not going to be phased. They're just another fight, and they got to eat. The army marches on its belly, so they got to eat, and so they're having a little repartee about how good the the MREs, the meal ready to eats, are versus the old school sea rats, etc., etc. And we go into a flashback sequence here where we learn that Dusty and Sneak Peek are buddies, and Sneak Peek took Dusty back with him for Christmas to spend Christmas with Sneak Peek's family, and we get a nice little flashback, which we don't usually get a lot of personal flashbacks. So I appreciate that in this book. It's really good. And then as they're in the middle of reminiscing, a bullet does come a little too close, and that snaps Sneak Peek back to normal.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, Stalker does not quit with saying, "We need help." This is also handled really well in the sense of showing us that sometimes there's, even with a team like GIJOE, there's just not enough resources. You know, Stalker's on the phone with Hawk, and you say, "I repeat, we are pinned down and request support." Like, if they set up on a crossfire, they're going to be history. And it's Hawk saying, "I appreciate the severity of your situation. There's nothing that can be done." And this is the part that's weird. Hawk is then bitching to Stalker, who's literally getting shot at. Hawk's like, "Yeah, and if things weren't bad enough, I've got the Emir of Benzheen hanging out in my command tent, peeking over my shoulder." Now, that is exposition for us, 100%. To be honest, and it's hard to see because it's a word balloon on a black background. So it is a dotted word balloon. So that might be him whispering off mic. So that the intent there may not be to tell Stalker this. It may just be Hawk going, "Man, and I also got this," which is exposition for the reader. So I think that's what Larry's doing, to be honest. So I'm not knocking it of like, why is Hawk bitching to Stalker? But in first read, it does read like that. Like, you're getting shot at. I got a guy yelling at me, you know. But I think that's what's happening here. And Hawk says, "All right, I promise you," he's going to just put the word out that you guys need help. If anyone can, you know, if anyone thinks they're free enough to go help you, they're going to come get it. And then we get an explanation, or we get further confirmation. That's the word I'm thinking of what Hawk's bitching about, where the Emir of Benzheen is saying, like, "Well, what's this marker you have in my oil reserves?" And Hawk says, "Well, that's our BattleForce 2000. He says, they're there to help support everyone else, and we know that Cobra wants that oil, so they're not going to blow it up, and we're not looking to start a fight, so they're just chilling in that area." And this Emir storms off saying, "You know, my oil is not yours to gamble with." It's a bad, you see bad stuff coming.
Yo, Joe!
In Benzheen City, those alley vipers bust into this house, and they find a young lady and her little child. And we see through dialogue that they're near the Porsche dealership, and these frag vipers are like, "We need a way to lure the Joes out in the open. And do you have any ideas?" And the camera settles in on the little boy and the woman, and this is solid storytelling. You keep them in frame the whole time, and all the, because we don't know who these people are. They're literally there for cannon fodder. But the way that Statma tells this, it's everything we need to know. It's just when a door busts open on a room and you see a mother who, and it looks like she might even have like a nun's ring on, but I'm thinking it's a burqa of some type. But an older woman hiding a young child. He's carrying this stuffed animal, which comes into play later. That's all you need to know, is that the bad guys are busting in on some kind of family unit. You see the mother looking at the alley viper as he's talking to her, the kid looking at the mother, and then the next panel, as the frag viper's looking out the window, which they also do a good job. Statma does a great job with keeping the blinds in play in each of these panels too. So this is so situationally we know where they're at. As he's looking through those blinds, in the background we see the family, and then again we get a close up of what they're talking about. As he says, "You got any ideas?" And then we pull back to see, as they say, as a matter of fact, I do. Now we see where they are in relation to the Joes, and it's there. We see Stalker hiding behind some Porsches, getting fired on. So, like when I talked earlier about it not being a good job of like moment to moment battle action, this is a moment to moment that works really, really well.
Yo, Joe!
So now we're going to that oil reserve we were talking about earlier, and we see the full display of BattleForce 2000. So Matt Plossman, if you're out there listening, get a hanky ready, because as the cover teased, things are about to go real bad for everyone's least favorite sub team. I did not like BattleForce 2000. They've grown on me, and I would like to get a collection of all of them together. But I was not a fan at the time. We've got Dodger here and DJ, and they basically are reiterating what we were talking about earlier, that like, yeah, they're hiding amongst the oil, but like this seems dangerous, but nobody's gonna risk all that. That's why Hawk thought the Cobra wouldn't think we'd go through this way. Meanwhile, Cobra is flying above them. There's an air war, but everyone's steering clear of where the battle force is hiding. And so they hear from Hawk that they're going to go help out that forward team.
Yo, Joe!
Meanwhile, there's another team deep in the Benzheen sewer system, and this is consists of Roadblock and I think it's Repeater and Tunnel Rat, and they are they're making their way through the sewers, but they're a little lost. Like they don't exactly know where they're going, but as they do, Cobras are chasing them. They actually hit a dead end, so Roadblock's a little trouble. But they're also going to try to go help Stalker and his team. But we see Tunnel Rat, and I love that they have Tunnel Rat find it, because that's what Tunnel Rat does. He finds that there's a trap door that leads straight up.
Yo, Joe!
And back to the forward team. We jump right to it where Sneak Peek pushes Dusty because he thinks they just threw a grenade or something. But it's not a grenade. It's that kid stuffed animal that we saw briefly on the previous page. And I love that. I love it because you could do this without, foreshadowing the stuffed animal on the kids. I didn't need to draw it in there, but it's so smart and it's such a good storytelling that if you're going to be throwing a stuffed animal later, make sure you introduce it earlier, so it's not just a magical stuffed animal. I think we could all wrap our heads around the fact that the kid would have a stuffed animal somewhere, but it's so smart to make sure that it's drawn in panel and everything earlier. And this is hard, man. They show the house, and it's a nice worm's eye view of, I don't know, that's the Frag Viper telling the kid to go get his stuffed animal. So he's sending this little kid in the middle of this firefight, because not only, sure, they're not shooting in that house, but like, you see the bullets ricocheting, flying overhead, just sending this little kid, and this kid's, I don't know, 6, 7, to get his stuffed animal. And he just kicks the kid out, closes the door behind him, and the kid goes for his stuffed animal. Now everyone here is speaking English, which whatever. Well, I always forgive that. I do not hold that against stories. It's like when they're like, oh, like they should be speaking in, Arabic or whatever. I'm always okay with getting the point across for the reader, for the intended reader. And the Frag Viper's like, you'll get your kid back after he does his job.
Yo, Joe!
Which is hardcore. That is hardcore. And Sneak Peek sees the kid, and he says, if the kid's out there when Cobra opens fire, he's gonna be in trouble. So Sneak Peek runs out to grab the kid. Dusty sees what's happening, realizing it's a trap. And as Sneak Peek does, this it's actually a Range Viper, and at least they show the Range Viper. I'm sure it's a bunch of other people got their shots, and the Range Viper, who's got that big ass gun, who I thought was like lobbed grenades, they show him hitting our boy Sneak Peek, and down goes Sneak Peek. Rat-a-tat-tat. Down goes Sneak Peek, and the kid screams for mama. No, man, your mama ain't dead. That's Sneak Peek that's dead.
Yo, Joe!
So the mom takes the moment, she elbows the Alley Viper in the ribs, and she runs out to get her kid. Vipers don't care. They're like, let her go. The kid did his job, blah, blah, blah. So they run out, and they get to safety. But Sneak Peek is now laying down. This is the kind of thing you saw in the movie Saving Private Ryan, where I forget which character it was, but he went out and he got shot. Was that Vin Diesel? because I know Vin Diesel was in it, and I think that might have been him. It was early in the movie when they went to the town square, and there was the sniper in the bell tower, and then it's where eventually Barry Peppers, who gets up into an angle he proves to be the superior sniper, but one of the soldiers in the unit gets shot in the middle of the square, and the idea is that he's still alive, and so as soldiers go out to help him, they then start getting shot. They leave the soldier alive to draw more people in. That's kind of what Cobra's doing here, and it's rough. It's rough to see. So, and this is some good storytelling. So sneak peeks out there, and Dusty's trying to wrap his head around what he just saw, and he says, I was just talking to him about Christmas dinner. So now we go back to a flashback. This is rarely seen in G.I. Joe. I think we need to point this out. This is rarely seen in G.I. Joe, these mental flashbacks. This is more the stuff that would be in your Weird War Tales and your Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, Sergeant Rock kind of stories, where there's a war story happening and somebody reminisces about something at home, and then it relates to the current story. As much as G.I. Joe is a war comic, G.I. Joe was never was a traditional war comic, told in those traditional ways of bringing those personal stories to the battle in the moment that we're reading about. It has never been that, and it never was. That is happening right now. This is very much an old school, Sergeant Rock, Sergeant Fury kind of storytelling, which I appreciate. I think it really makes this issue stand out. And we see that there's this backstory of Dusty and Sneak Peek, spending this Christmas together, and Sneak Peek's mom, talking to Dusty, saying, that she has heard a lot about Dusty from her son.
Yo, Joe!
And she goes on to share that her brother was in Vietnam, and his unit was overrun. He's missing in action. They never got a body back. And the whole time she's telling the story to Dusty, she's doing dishes, and she's focusing on the dishes because she doesn't want to think about it. She doesn't, it's that focus of emotion where we're going to do dishes, but it's not about the dishes. And you see Dusty, and this is really nice acting on the part of Statma. Dusty is looking at her. She's looking at the dishes. Until the very end, when she says, if anything would happen to my boy, would you promise to bring him back to me? And that's great. And that's it's this disassociation that the mom has about, what military is and the level of service that her brother had to go through, and now her son is going through. But she needs to focus on little things, such as making sure the glass is clean, making sure the dishes are good. But when it comes down to it, she turns and she looks Dusty straight in the eye and say, bring my son back. And talking about coloring, they do a really nice job with splitting the colors out in all these flashbacks to this washed out yellow-green look, which, drives home that it's a flashback and just sets it apart that it's this memory that's happening. It's really, really well done.
Yo, Joe!
So back in the now time, Dusty promised to bring him back. So he's not, because Stalker's like, we're going. Like, BattleForce 2000 is on their way to get him. We're going to get out of here. And Dusty's like, no, I'm bringing him back. And Stalker tells him, man, Stalker's always making the hard decisions. Is that why we love Stalker so much? Because I love Stalker. And is that why he's always making the hard decisions? And he's telling him this time, no, we're leaving him for now, because if you go out there, you're going to die. And that's it. That's it. So he says, Dusty's like, I promised my mom. And Stalker goes, hey, I promised my own mom. But it's my job to make he says it here. It's my job to make the unpopular decisions. I'm not going to let you get yourself killed. So as they're saying that, we learn Sneak Peek's not dead yet. He actually rolls over and it's like, so now that we know he's not dead,
Yo, Joe!
Different story. So now let's cut back to BattleForce 2000. They're starting to pull out. So they got the orders they need to go help that forward team. So they're leaving the oil fields. And this Emir of Benzheen is such a rat. He left, he got on a payphone and he calls Cobra Commander. First of all, how'd you get the number? He calls Cobra Commander and he's so stupid. And he says, hey, just letting you know, the Joe team, BattleForce 2000, they're driving through the oil storage. I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't fire on them. Cobra Commander says, well, how much you going to pay me to not fire on them? It's $500 million. Cobra Commander puts his phone down and he says, he tells this Televiper exactly where the BattleForce is, like, yeah, go kill him. You know, like they're coming in through the storage tanks. And we just cut right to it. This is great. This is really dense storytelling. It cuts moment to moment to moment. We just cut right to, the batteries are firing right away. And
Yo, Joe!
BattleForce 2000 does not even get a half-page splash. Was there 6 of them? So let's see. Maverick, Knockdown, Avalanche, Blocker, Blaster, and then DJ. So is there 7? So Dodger, Maverick, Knockdown, Avalanche, Blocker, Blaster, and DJ. There's 7 members of BattleForce 2000, and they get a quarter-page panel. And technically, it's not even a quarter page because it's a 1/3 quarter page because there's some shots of Dusty and Stalker learning that BattleForce 8 is no longer coming to help them because they just got blown up. That takes up a wider spot than the death of 7 Joes, or 6 Joes rather, because Dodger's alive. But yeah, that's how much, Larry, how I hated BattleForce 2000. They don't even get a half-page spread. They're all dead. So Maverick, Knockdown, Avalanche, Blocker, Blaster, and DJ is dead. And we even get to see DJ's dead body in the seat of the Marauder next to Dodger. So Dodger's the only survivor. I can't wait to see if Dodger is used more in the future of like the lone survivor of BattleForce 2000. I have a feeling it just gets dropped and we never see or hear from Dodger again. But I really would love it for like just somehow like Dodger to carry the flag of BattleForce 2000 and his dead compadres into battle going forward.
Yo, Joe!
And I don't mean to laugh. It is handled with the serious levity, but knowing that specifically, I've seen interviews where Larry has said he disliked them and was happy to kill them off. That always makes me chuckle. So we see now we're actually learning what Tunnel Rat saw when he found that little secret door, and they're actually in the enlisted quarters for the military, and they see that even the enlisted soldiers, wall-to-wall carpeting, wood paneling, stereo, leather couches. And they're like, this must be where the big shots live, and we learn that it's just the enlisted men. And with all this oil money, they have the highest per capita income in the world, so they have to pay their army privates $60,000 a year, which is a lot of money back then. Or they could make more money sweeping floors. And the Joes are saying that's more money than they've ever seen in their life. But Roebuck gets them back on point. So this is kind of making a point about the balance of power over there, and all the money that they just have to waste and spend on military just to hold on to it.
Yo, Joe!
So we're still at the Porsche dealership. The guys are still pinned down. They have not yet gotten sneak peek yet. And Stalker realizes, I mean, the longer they stay, they're just going to get chewed up. All they can do is rush the Cobras, try to get a little payback. And Dusty says, if we're rushing Cobras, we're rushing the ones that sent that kid out. And I think that's Repeater. Says, we're going to get mowed down before we get that. And then Stalker says, well, those are the brakes. Like that's Recoil. Soul Time, that's Recoil. He says, what's the matter, Recoil? You sign up in this outfit for the nifty pension. I love lines like that. And yeah, so they're basically they're about to Butch and Sundance it. Speaking before we go,
Yo, Joe!
get a promo for it. Here's a product every Marvel fan can get into. Marvel Slumber bags, sleeping bags with old school Marvel pictures on it. These look great. Did anyone have a Marvel sleeping bag specifically from this era? They're $19.95 each. You got Spider-Man, Captain America, and then there's one with Spidey, Hulk, and Captain America on it. These are good looking slumber bags. Sleeping bags, slumber bags. It's funny. I've always called them sleeping bags myself. Seeing Slumber bags sounds weird. Marvel Slumber bags. I don't know. That sounds weird, but these are great. Did anyone have these?
Yo, Joe!
All right, so we are on the next page, and now so the Joes are making their move, and as they do, sure enough, they get shot. So who do we say that was? Recoil, and Ambush both get shot right away. I don't think they're dead. I think they're just hit. And Stalker and Dusty, they're making their way. Dusty is stopping to get Sneak Peek. And he's not going to leave him in the middle.
Yo, Joe!
And as they're doing it, the Roblox team catches up. And they're actually, so this whole time, Roblox team has been like sneaking up on the building that had the Joes under fire. And you know that because one of the troopers they show is that range Viper who mowed down Sneak Peek earlier. And as Roadblock kicks this door in, they just unleash these the Joes, and they murder them. And then it's a little bit convoluted, but it's all happening at the same time. Roblox team shoots them all. Also, Dodger shows up in the Marauder, and he blows through a wall, and he murders a bunch of Vipers, screaming, "This is BattleForce 2000." And Dusty picks up Lowlight, and he carries him on his shoulder. As Stalker's like, you better keep up. Now, I want to know actually what's going on with Ambush and Recoil, to be honest.
Yo, Joe!
Stalker goes flying through the window of that lady's house, and he kills, at least he gets the Alley Viper, and as he's tumbling on the ground trying to get his bearings, the Frag Viper starts to take aim, and Dusty gets his revenge from behind, which is he's got a smoking barrel, and he's got Lowlight over his shoulder.
Yo, Joe!
So now all the teams are reunited. It's everybody's got everybody. They get back to the Joe's tents. It's the recon team, the deep recon team, and Dodger. So we've got some wounded. So Sneak Peek, and we learn from this is from Stretcher. He says, "Dusty, this man's been dead for hours." So he's carrying a dead Sneak Peek. He carried him all the way back here, and Dusty says, "I promised." And that's very much a old school war comic story that's being told there. So I'm assuming Recoil and Ambush are just wounded. We didn't see him get up or anything, but I'm assuming they're fine. And we see this Emir of Benzheen still on the phone. He's calling Cobra Commander again. He says, "Why did you blow up my oil?" Commander says, "Well, because the offer you made was too low. So now that we both know the rules of the game, how about we bargain a little bit?" And next issue, the war continues in a story we could only call Metalhead. So we're about to get Metalhead, guys. And if you don't know, from the days when we covered the DIC era, you're not listening to a fan of Metalhead. So I'm excited to see how they handle Metalhead in the comics to see if I like them a little better. But man, did I not like Metalhead. We've got a Stalker Bio, 2-page Stalker Bio in the back, talking about like his greatest hits, talking about all his issues that really Stalker took forward notice in. And he's had a lot. I love Stalker. I think everyone does. I think everyone loves Stalker. He's very often the forgotten core Joe member. If you know Joe, and if you read these stories and stuff, Stalker's always been integral to the comic stories. And yet, when they do the like a new line of action figures, or they do a new Funko Pops or whatever, they always leave out Stalker. I have a feeling it's because his name is Stalker. As my wife, Toilet Teal, once said on the show, as we were doing one of the cartoons, and I said, "Yeah, that's the guy Stalker." I don't know if you guys remember, she stopped and said, "Wait, his name is Stalker?" So that might be why he's not as desirable from a marketing perspective. And, a Stalker by any other name just is not Alonzo. That's all I'll say. But he is very often like just the forgotten core Joe. From day one, he's been there and been strong. I just love Stalker so much. So, yeah, I gotta think it's because of the name. It's easier to slap Roadblock on if you need to get diversity out there early in the line, and it's got to be easier to say, let's do Roadblock. And we'll leave the guy named Stalker for the second or third round, because he always looks great. He's got the dope beret, and he's got the two looks. He's got the winter look and the summer look. And over here in the post box from the pit, we got a bunch of letters. We got letters from Andrew K, not Andrew WK, just Andrew K from West, and it says Vancouver, B-A-N. I wonder if it's West, it's supposed to be Vancouver, or if it is a Vancouver, British Columbia. Mark McClaim from Mount Sterling, Ohio. Alex Newborn wrote in from MSC, Alabama. Joseph Michael Adler III from Barrington, Illinois. And this is fun. There's 2 letters in here. They're both from the Reese family. Sarah Reese from Pamplin, Virginia, and Brad Reese from Pamplin, Virginia. Sarah writes, it's charming. That's, the letters page says something like, hey, it's some kind of conspiracy, 2 Joe readers in the Reese family. Sarah asks, why are cartoon characters more handsome, cuter, better looking, and funnier than real human boys? Answer me that. Well, Sarah, 30 years later, I hope you found yourself an appropriate match, as whatever life will let you. But what's funny here is, so we have a letters page calling it out that it's the same family and it is from the same address, Route 1, Box 67. But on Sarah's letter, they wrote 67L, and on Brad's letter, they wrote 671. So if we're trying to communicate to them, I don't know if you write 671 or 67L, but it's I think it's funny that typo was made, even though they acknowledge that they're absolutely from the same family. Any hoots, that's it for G.I. Joe 113. The body count rises. Boy, is this a good issue. This whole run is just solid, man. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am. And yeah. Oh, one real quick note. Throw out. Talking about Cool Breeze, character sensation of 1991, Dave Amiot, friend of the show, threw out some. He found some custom figures. You guys, they've done some customs of Cool Breeze, and they look great. I love them. They're really great. But I wonder why they've never done a. You know what? I'll bet you. I'll bet you Marvel owns Cool Breeze. I would bet you that is why. Because using as an example, ROM Space Knight was a licensed toy, but Marvel made up all the stuff about the Dire Wraiths and the Knights of Galador and all that stuff. So they can no longer reprint ROM, but they can use the concept of the Knights of Galador because they made them for the comic book. I would willing to bet Cool Breeze, not a character that Hasbro has the rights to. He's a character that it's owned by Marvel. You know what that means? We can bring Cool Breeze into the Marvel universe. So hashtag, let's get Cool Breeze into the MCU. In Avengers 5, The Rise of Cool Breeze. Anyway, that's my thoughts for the day. Now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.